Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Frank and Stan chat. And this is a special Spotlight edition, Spotlight number 29. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Jill Munday, who I've known for many years. But hello, Jill.
Hi Frank. Hi Stan. Nice to see
Yep.
you.
Yeah, well, I did one of these chats last week without Stan. It obviously didn't go quite as well, but
Yeah. The ratings are much higher. You've just
I think they're significantly lower stuff. But anyway, yeah, Stan was away last week on holiday, but I'm glad to say he's back this week. And these spotlights come about because either we know somebody who's doing something interesting and we feel as though we want other people to hear about it and we want to know more, or because actually people contact us and say, "Hey, I think I want to come on your chat." And in this case, I've known Jill for a long period of time, and I think we were emailing each other recently, and I just remember all the work that she's doing with a school in Nepal. So that's what we're going to chat about today. So before we start, Jill, just give us a little summary in perhaps 1 or 2 minutes about what your career has been, and how perhaps we know each other, and just an introduction to the work you're doing in Nepal.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you say, you and I have known one another for a number of years through working together at Ofsted. And our roles as HMI were closely linked because we were both assistant divisional managers for the LEA division. So
Yes.
we did a lot of stuff together that has long been forgotten, I think, and rewritten. But there we go. Um, Prior to that, I came into HMI work. I was head of an advisory service in East Sussex, primary advisor before that, primary head teacher before that, the usual route from being a primary teacher. I also worked for quite a few years in what was then Bognor College of Education as an assistant lecturer and then as a lecturer, and worked on a national project in those days, which seemed really forward thinking because it was about what we now would call information technology, but it was using things like language masters, if anybody remembers.
Yes, yeah, do remember those.
So that was a national project. So really just the route came from primary education up into HMI work. And since I retired, I've done a lot of part-time bits and pieces, but nothing full-time. I've worked a bit for social services on their MAPA panel. I've worked for the University of Brighton supervising students on teaching practice, etc. But largely I've been involved, as you say, in this school in Nepal.
Stan, whenever we get a colleague like Jill on, I have to say, well, you tell me was going through my mind at the moment.
I can tell you it'll be the same that's going through mine. What have I done with my life?
But also, there's the
I
thing
can't
about
find time.
how the sort of breadth of experience plays into your work as an HMI or an inspector. You know, the understanding, keep going on about understanding the breadth of the education provision and how things are interconnected and how the risks there are of people inspecting who don't have that range of experience, you know, who might have, you know, it's not their fault, but they've come through a very narrow route, perhaps in a multi-academy trust, been appointed as a head, then as a sort of director, then did the training, then go out inspecting, you know, and you compare that to, we had Alwyn Pugh on a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, similar, and this is what's triggered it for me, Joe, just that range of experience that Alwyn and yourself are drawing on. You know, I think that's a safe place,
Mm.
a more secure place to make a judgment.
I think we were very fortunate to be able to have those opportunities and to be able to use them in the way we did.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Nepal, tell us the story. How did you get involved in that?
Well, I've been involved for many years. Really, it was through somebody who was a former head teacher colleague of mine when I was a head teacher in the Brighton area. One of the schools he was head at was a school called the Dharma School, which had Buddhist roots. He was really interested in Buddhism. He went out to India to learn more about Buddhism. And while he was there studying, he met a monk, Pema Doshi, his name is. And he also met a lady, an educator from Sweden, Karin Soderland. Now, together they decided that they would like to help the poor children in Kathmandu. They at first wanted to start a school for street children, but Pema, the monk, said, "No, you don't want to do that. Everybody does that. I can take you to places that are really much more in need of a school."
Oh,
And he
right.
took them up into the foothills, into this tiny village, Malagiri, and showed them a plot of land. Don't ask me how he managed to find this land or who paid for it, but anyway, there's this plot of land. And he said, "This is where we should build a school." And Kevin and his group met the local community, who at that time, we've got some photographs, were really, really poor. I mean, they're still very poor, but they demonstrated that poverty through their clothing, the rags, through not looking unkempt, not having proper homes, etc. Anyway, they decided they were going to build a school. By this time, Kevin, who was working for the University of Brighton, came back, persuaded people that they should get involved in this, raised the money, and of course, as a former colleague of his, we were all sort of involved in getting
So was he
on.
one of these people that was very infectious? You know, he
Yes,
just
he was. I mean,
yeah.
sadly, he's no longer with us. He
Ah,
died a few years ago, but his family has still maintained that
right,
interest.
right.
Um, and yes, everybody responded. So the money was raised to build the school, which, sounds phenomenal, and it is, but of course, things are very cheap out there. So you're talking about very different amounts of money.
Yes.
The school was built. It's built. It's in the foothills. Uh, it's about 2,000 meters high. It's a terraced landscape. So the school itself has 5 different blocks, but they're all on different
Different
terraces.
levels.
I think it's
Yeah.
something like 98 steps between the top and the
Oh,
bottom, and
right, right.
up and down between all the time. So there's a sort of office area, then there are classrooms, and then at the bottom there's a sort of kitchen and meeting room and dining room, etc. School was built, and then of course we had to think about, well, how are we going to maintain this?
Yeah.
So we undertook to support the school. At first, Kevin said this will be for about 5 years. Well, we're about 15 years on now, and we're still having to do that really because they have very limited opportunities to raise any money themselves, these people. So the school costs us, we have now 60 children, well, 65. I think officially we should only have 60 because of the accommodation, aged between 3 and 8. We've got 4 teachers, a head teacher, cooks, caretaker come guard. The school costs us about £25,000 a year to run, which is less
Right.
than one teacher here would cost you. So it's remarkable, really. The lady from Sweden has a charity called Trinity. They do a lot of, they share that expense with us.
Right.
And between us, we pay quarterly. We have a board, an NGO board in Nepal, that is responsible for administering the school and the money and the funds and everything. So we don't intervene. It's very easy to feel you know better.
Yes.
We've
Yeah.
got a broad sort of experience of education, but we have to respect all the cultural norms and the ways in which things are done out there. And it's far better for us if that is dealt with by a board of people whom we trust, who are high level people themselves with good skills. We have a doctor from a local hospital on the board. We have obviously Pema, the monk, who's been involved. He's about 90 now, I think, but he's still involved. Been involved all these years. We have former politician. We have a former head teacher of a boarding school in Nepal, in Kathmandu. So, we've got a good group of people who we can rely on. So we try not to interfere too much, but they're very good at asking us for our comments and
Oh, right, right, right.
it works quite well. Mm.
Stan?
No, I was just
No, I was
I
going to
was
say,
happy
because
that
you,
they ask for
Sorry.
help and advice rather than you assume you can give it. I
Yes,
think
yeah,
that's an assumption that a lot of people, I don't know if it's my age or my era, think they can tell everybody how to do things properly.
yeah. You know,
mm,
it's very, I've visited the school and I'm going a few times and I'm going again in November. Um, it would be very easy if you had your inspector's hat on in England. You'd go in and say, "This is terrible. Look at that rote learning. They're colouring in a lot, and they're doing." But you have to accept that these are the norms. These children at 8 are going to go onto a government school. They
right,
need to be
right.
able to fit into those routines. These children might be filling in some worksheets occasionally and learning by rote and reciting things, but
Mm,
they love it. They're
yeah,
happy, they're enjoying it.
yeah,
It's part of their culture, it's what they do. And it's not really up to us to go in and change those things because
mm,
it would be counterproductive. So you have to balance all of that.
Yeah.
You can give advice. I mean, we've been really, really pleased that in the last 2 years. We've had a new head teacher there in the last 2 years, and he has organised Montessori training for the teachers, and we've been really happy about that because that inevitably brings
mm,
with it much more child-centred activity, much less focus on worksheets and things like that, you know. So we've managed to buy them a whiteboard. In the last 2 or 3 years, the village of Malagiri has had Wi-Fi installed, so
oh,
it's
really? Right.
intermittent, so that but they can use that, and they'll be needing that when they go on to other schools. You know, they
Yeah.
need to know these things.
So does that satisfy the demand? 65? No.
No.
So how do you select or how do you
Well,
choose?
it's really difficult. Initially, the school was set up to help what was it's a very loose description, but to help the poorest of the families.
Mm,
And they have a local government structure. So we have be like the equivalent to a local councillor, if you like, for the Malagiri area. Now, he's a youngish man who, in fact, has been involved with the school from the beginning and is now a local councillor. He's lived in the village all his life. So we very much depend on his knowledge of the families as to who who has the most need and who should
right,
come.
right.
It's very difficult. There are families who, would love to come, but we just can't, unless we build another classroom, which we can't afford to do, we can't do it.
So there's no provision whatsoever. So it's either this or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, the government would say there is provision. There are government schools for children who should be at school from 5 plus, you know.
But
But
miles away or unable.
if they've got to walk for 2.5 hours to
Yeah,
get there, they're
yeah.
not going to go, are they? You know,
No.
nearly all the children do walk. Once they're 8, they change schools and go to what they call the high school, bit like a middle school, I
Mhm.
guess. When I went the first time, they would all be walking to school. I mean, can you imagine our 8 and 9 year olds walking like 2 hours to get to school and then 2 hours to get home again and back again the next morning, and 6 days a week? They work on a Saturday. So now there is a little tuk-tuk
Oh,
that
right.
does take the children. Actually, a funny story. Last time I went with a friend of mine, Louise, who's a real character. And the children were going home on the tuk-tuk. They take them up to a sort of certain point where the mothers meet them in that area. And she said, "I'm gonna go up in the tuk-tuk and just to see, to see the mothers meeting the children." She came back. She had to come back. The head teacher said, "Well, how are you going to get back?" And she said, "Well, I can walk down the hill." He said, "No, I'll pick you up on my motorbike." So she went up in the tuk-tuk, came back on the back of the motorbike, the head teacher's motorbike, which we actually have helped to buy for the school.
Right.
It's actually his because they need some form of transport, you know. Um,
Yeah, so how
I'll
do
never
you,
guess how many children were on that tuk-tuk.
how many?
26.
26.
She said they kept coming in. They put them under the feet, under the well of this, hanging on the back.
Oh God. I mean, how do you get teachers?
Well, that's an interesting question because we've had, for example, three head teachers. One of them, Anita, was with us for a long time, for about 10 years. She did a brilliant job. Then we've had two since. Um, of course, we're not very far mile wise from Kathmandu. It's only maybe 60 or so miles.
Right,
It takes you 4 or 5 hours to drive there because
right,
of the road structure and because you're going, zigzagging up and down. Um, we recognised right at the beginning that teachers wouldn't come from the area. So there are rooms in the school. There are bedrooms.
right.
There are a couple of bathrooms so that the teachers can actually live in during the week. They can go down to Kathmandu or wherever they want to go. They can stay there for term time. And that's what they do. Actually, two of the teachers, including the head teacher, interestingly, their families come from the Malagiri region.
Right.
But even the head teacher stays in the school during the week because it would take him 2 hours or so to get home. When you talk about a village, it's not like our villages. It's very dispersed. Everything's, different homes on different terraces with small subsistence farming. They may have a goat, they may have a buffalo, they've got a small piece of land, growing sort of cabbages, cauliflowers, radishes. Coriander is a big crop, and obviously
Right.
they can take a lot of that down to Kathmandu and sell that. Um, but basically, that's what they do. They're subsistence farmers. So we do have to advertise for teachers, but the systems are very, very different from here. If I give you an example, the previous head teacher 2 years ago left quite suddenly, and we needed a new head teacher. Now, one of the board had been a head teacher of a school called Bright Horizons in Kathmandu. He's retired now. And that was a boarding school for children and family. They may be orphans or families who couldn't afford education, and they were given scholarships to the school. And he said, I know someone who'd be perfect, and the board's going to interview him. So they interviewed him and they appointed him. Now, I
Right.
mean, you couldn't do that here, but actually, he's a brilliant head teacher.
Yeah.
And that's the way they do things.
I
So
actually think we are getting close to that here, closer than you think.
And they're not all brilliant.
no, no. Well, then that's one of the examples of how we have to go with what is done
Mm,
locally. We
mm.
haven't got any way that we can go out there and set up an interview system or anything, and we don't know enough about the Nepalese system to be able to do that. So we have to leave it to them. So the teachers, some of them live on site, some of them don't, some of them go back to their families at weekends, etc. But they're all well qualified. Two of our younger teachers are doing part-time degrees at the moment.
Right.
So, they're very keen to learn, and they know the region well, as also a lot of them.
In
So
terms of how do the children cope coming into the school?
mm,
I mean,
mm,
it's I think here you sort of see on television, don't you? Or you see children walking to school. You're surrounded by education in many respects. But actually, I suspect because of the range, the distance involved, there isn't that sort of vision of the school. So when children come, do
mm,
they just sort of conform and just do exactly what they're told, or are
yeah,
there challenges in terms of
yeah,
some children are much more difficult to settle? You can't settle them.
yeah. It's interesting. I would say as a nation and um, behaviorally, the Nepalese are very different. They're very gentle people. Um, their children work hard at home. If they're not
Mm.
at school, they're going to be out helping on the land. The older girls are going to be helping with the younger children. And that's one of the challenges for us, actually, keeping the girls in
Oh,
education.
really? Right, right.
Um, so they have this expectation of conforming and behaving properly. The school itself has become very much the hub of the community. So there's a lot of activities that are done using the school as the centre for those activities. And the school does a lot of they have a lot of events. There are a lot of celebrations for holidays, religious events, etc. in Nepal. They always have these parties and events on the school premises, and the families come along. So I think because of that, the school is a place that children want to come to rather than seeing it as a threat or something that is unfamiliar. And that's a great help.
Yes.
The parents love to come and they love to do things there. The families themselves, they tend to live multi-generationally, in families. If you marry, even the head teacher who's married to a lovely girl, Saraswati, she does a lot of work for us, but she's not a qualified teacher, but she's a very bright girl and does a lot of work for us and speaks English really fluently, which is amazing.
Right.
She lives with her husband's family because that's what they do when they marry. The women go and live with the family. The children are just sort of accept, and in fact there's a lot of competition, as we were saying earlier, for them to have a place at the school. They're very young when they come, they're 3, and I don't believe some of them are 3 even.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
They don't keep birth dates the same as we do.
Right.
The children will say they don't have a birthday. They'll tell you they were born when it was raining or in the spring when the flowers were out or whatever. So sometimes it's quite hard to know exactly how old they are. And when you look at them, you think to yourself, actually, I don't think that child's 3, but how do you prove it?
Hey,
So,
I'm just thinking, for you, when you come back,
mm,
how do you reflect on what you've seen
mm,
and how, and how it impacts on your thoughts about education here?
mm.
I don't, just to sort of try and get a sense of, it's not,
Yes,
as you were saying, it's not about you imposing the will on them,
no,
but
no.
actually seeing that actually obviously affects how you might view stuff over here.
Well, it's interesting. The curriculum in the school, for example, the children at home speak Tamang. They are from the Tamang heritage, which is largely originally from the Tibetan regions. And Tamang is largely a spoken rather than a written language. When they also have to learn to speak Nepali. So when they come to school, they learn to write Nepalese, but from the beginning, they learn English as well. So
Right.
we've got 3 and 4-year-olds already having to cope with 3
Three
languages,
languages.
which they do. Um, they uh, they learn a lot through play. They learn a lot through singing, dancing, reciting, copying the older children, and playing together. A lot of the videos we've got of the children outside in the main playground area doing together, the whole school doing big dancing sequences, learning rhymes and dancing to the rhymes and all this kind of thing. And that's how those young children are sort of brought into the school community, really. And I've got photographs of when I was there before where you've got the little toddlers really just standing there looking, but they're learning by
Learning.
looking. And in another month, they'll be joining in and
Yeah.
doing everything. They have English lessons, they have maths, they do a lot of practical work, but every day they do yoga, every day they do meditation. Now, this is something which you would never see in our
Mm,
schools.
mm.
You can go into a classroom for 20 minutes before they have their lunch break, and the children are all sitting cross-legged like this, in silence, meditating. Not a teacher there, just doing it. So that culturally they're very different. And actually, I think sometimes there is a lot we could learn from them,
Mm.
not only them learning
Yes.
from us.
Yes.
Because the expectations are very clear right from the beginning, and the parents expect that as well, which is perhaps they don't challenge in the same way as we might get here. They
Yeah.
just accept that this is what is best for their children, and they're just grateful for what the children are getting.
Clearly.
Is the provision for, I mean, do you feed the children when they're
Oh, we
there?
do. The children come to school at 8:30 in the morning. First thing they do is they wash and brush their teeth. They don't have water in every home. There are village taps. They do now mostly have some electricity, but no water. So they come to school, they clean their teeth, they wash, they have breakfast. They're given uniforms. which are like tracksuits, that kind of thing in the winter. They have uniforms, which we provide. Then they have lunch and they have a snack before they go home. So, because one of the major problems in the area is malnutrition, and it's because they're not eating enough of the right things, and also because the mothers, when they're expecting the children, don't have the right food to be able to feed them properly. So that's something we're very aware of. And we have to focus a lot on things that probably in our schools would be considered not the teacher's responsibilities or the school's responsibilities, because we have to look at it in a much more holistic way, which I think is right, actually.
Yeah, well, I agree entirely. I think both of us do, don't we, Stan?
Yeah.
This, this idea that I'll only teach you as you walk in the classroom. That's my responsibility. I mean, I don't think any of us agree with that. But one thing you said, because is around a guard. You have a guard there.
Yeah.
It's sort of made me wonder then about, are there obvious risks to staff and to
One of the
children?
reasons is that the school is on a road. Now, it's interesting. The reason that Malagiri is quite fortunate, although it spreads out over a large area, the part of it where the school is on the main, what used to be called the Rajpath Road, which was the main road that ran from India to China through Nepal. So it's quite an important road. So in the end, the roads are wiggly. We don't want children, running out into the road. We haven't had any trouble, but I think it's just culturally they like to protect the building. They know it's precious to them. We have a guard there. He's caretaker as well. He's responsible for looking after the building, and that's really all it is. We don't really need they call it the guard, but it's not what we would see.
Right. Yeah.
Hostile people away. It's really to take care of the building and to make sure everything's safe and secure.
Yeah.
Of course, it's quite vulnerable. The whole area is vulnerable to, we had big earthquakes, of course, in 2015, and part of the school had to be rebuilt. Flooding, because there are lots of rivers and streams, and there's constant monsoon. They have monsoon there as well. So the physical structure of the building has to be monitored very carefully as well.
So what about cold, heat?
Heat? They don't have any heat in the school. In fact, sometimes they will send us some photos saying the children are learning outside today because it's a sunny day and it's warmer outside than inside.
I'd love it, Jill, if you could send us a few photos. I'll put them at the end of the video if colleagues would like to see.
Yes,
but also, if somebody wanted to support this work, can you just explain how they might be able to do that?
We have a website. It's simply all lowercase, one word, malagirischool.uk. Very simple. If you go to that, there's lots of photos, videos, information about the school. It's regularly updated. And there's a link there to donate if people want to donate. And at the moment, we work with the Open Collective, which looks after money for small charitable organisations. They do all our books for us, etc. So all the donations go through Open Collective, and that's where the link will take you. But it's linked back into our website, so the two work together.
Brilliant.
And we update that regularly whenever there's anything happened in the school. Almost on a weekly basis, we get photos and videos from the school, which is great. So we update that.
And you're next out in November, did you say?
November, yes. The reason for going in November partly is we are affiliated, or we belong to an association called Brango, British Association for NGOs Working in Nepal, basically. And that's linked to the British Nepal Society, which I think started after the Gurkhas, with lots of military people. But they have a conference in Kathmandu every November, and it's a really good opportunity to network with other organisations who might perhaps be able to help us in, I don't know, with our water at the school or whatever it is, So I'm going to the conference, or we're going to the conference in Kathmandu first, and then we'll go up to the school after that. So it's a bit chilly up there in November, but it's about 2,000 metres high, so it's a bit.
Wow. But it's been a pleasure talking to you, Jill. I hope if there are people watching that they will go along to the website and
Yes, I hope they will. You get a good feel for the
yeah, for what's going on.
colour of everything and the liveliness of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But thank you very much for
Thank you,
joining
John.
us. And also, just to say, we are back with a weekly chat next week. So, yeah, we're back. We've got about, I've just been looking in the calendar, so we've got 5 or 6 before the end of the summer term. So, quite a wide range, but probably not as diverse or different as this one.
I
So,
always feel guilty on these spotlights, and today where I don't feel as though I contribute anything because I'm busy listening.
People contribute afterwards.
I think it's easier for me as well because I think I mean, I've known Jill for a reasonably long period of time, and actually, there have been some very challenging periods in that time, hasn't there? The stuff we
Indeed.
were dealing with. So I think that's also brought us sort of a little bit closer together. So it's a bit more difficult, I think, Stan, for you. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
make some
Yeah.
sort of cover for you there.
I'm very happy to be able to tell people a bit about it anyway.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant. Okay, so until next week, that's all for us. So we'll see you soon. Cheerio.
Bye.
bye. Bye.